Harvestime University. Today we're looking at Church Development 101, Lesson 6, which we fondly call Nasty Neighbors. How to deal with the most difficult neighbors. Now you might think that, everybody would be just thrilled that you're looking at land in their neighborhood and that you're going to put up a growing dynamic ministry center that's going to help evangelize the lost and develop fully devoted Christ followers. Well, not everybody's going to be excited. I mean, I hope for your sake that everybody's thrilled and that you don't have to deal with any of this, because it's not necessarily fun. But, every time God does a phenomenal work, there's always, people who are against it. I mean, if you look at Noah, everybody going around poking fun at him while he's out building an ark, thinking the old man's lost his mind. But he knew what he was doing, and you just had to tolerate that. Look at Nehemiah. Nehemiah was called by God to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem, and he had to deal with Sanballt and others, who frankly, the devil sent to discourage. Well, we see this with churches around the country today too, just as we see in the Old Testament, that when God does something great, there's often adversaries that come out of wherever, and they are dead set on discouraging you, on trying to stop you. Some of those adversaries will come within, from within your own church. But what we want to do is share some of the experiences that we have had as we develop churches all across America in dealing with neighbors and how to best position yourself as the good guy. Because if we're going to put a church in a neighborhood community, our primary target market for reaching the lost is that community. So we want to be good neighbors. We don't want to come in and have our whole agenda and never really connect with our community, or we're going to be failures at reaching that community. So we're going to talk a little bit on how to win over everybody in your neighborhood as you look to expand on your existing property or as you look to relocate to a new campus. We want to be very proactive in communications. We want to win the support of people so that they learn that, we're friendly, we're trustworthy, and we want to draw them into the Christian community. So let's talk about how to do that. The first project that we're going to look at is called Clayton Elementary. We work with a church out in Northern California, and they looked at purchasing a beautiful site. It was right on a major intersection off Clayton Road in Clayton, California. It was a former elementary school that was now defunct. They had built a new school, and this particular property was on the market. So the church that hired me asked me to come in, do a master site plan, and work towards getting their campus, first off, master planned, and then break that down into a step-by-step development process that we call a phased development plan. Most often a church can't afford to go buy a piece of property, build everything that's ever going to be built, and do that all at one time. It usually works into various phases. So we start with the end goal in mind, looking at our master plan that matches the needs, the wants, everything that we need based on our strategic ministry plan, our purpose and our vision and our mission. What does that master plan look like? And then we'll break that down into bite-sized chunks, okay? But in order to do this, we got to buy land. We have to get the zoning, whether it's a conditional use permit or a zoning change. We have to get the community to support us as much as possible. But, often we have to go through the process with the planning department called a zoning change or conditional use permit, which involves public hearings. Anytime we have a public hearing, we have to invite the community around our property into a public hearing, usually held at the planning department and the city council chambers at the city or at the county. And they get to speak up as to whether they are pro or against our project. And this can have major ramifications on your ministry, because the people who are elected officials, the planning department in this case, listens to what people have to say. These are the people that vote, and get them in the office in the first place. So it's a good idea if you're a politician to listen to them. What we want to do is teach you how to prime the pump ahead of time so that when you do get to a planning commission meeting, you can know what the outcome's going to be. You can know in advance who's going to get up and who's going to say what and how are things going to go. If you don't know that, you can get completely ambushed when you go in there. You can be embarrassed because of your lack of preparation, and your project can be thrown right out the door. We've seen that happen. It's not a pretty sight. So what we want to do is teach you the steps that you need on how to go about best preparing for that. So let's look at the Clayton Elementary School, some of the things that we ran into, and how we were able to get a community of neighbors around the school who were against the church developing the property. We're going to tear down all the buildings at Clayton Elementary. We're going to develop a church campus there. The neighbors were against that, but we were able to work with them in such a way that before we got to the Planning Commission meeting, we had 100% of their support. And not just support like, all right, well, if you want to build a church, we won't get in your way. Okay, that's better than nothing, but that's not the support we're looking for. We're looking for neighbors who enthusiastically support our project. I mean, I'm not saying they showed up with like cheerleader pom-poms going, give us a church, you know, that kind of thing. But I'll tell you what, they were very enthusiastic about our church, but they didn't start out that way. So we had a little bit of work to do. The slides here, this is a picture of Clayton Elementary. The street down in front is called Clayton Road. This is in Concord, California. It's a beautiful site. The church or the school district was no longer using it for an elementary school, so the property was for sale. Now, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that before we closed escrow, okay, before we actually own the property, we want planning department approval. We want to know that we can put our church or the facility and campus that matches our long-range vision for the ministry. We want to know we can do this on that property. And people say, oh, that sounds great. They say they'll support you. But you don't really know that you've got it until after you go through the conditional use process with the planning department, and it's a done deal. Now, a lot of times you can make that a part of your requirements to purchase the land. You can put a deposit down, you can put $10,000 down or whatever you need for earnest money. You enter into your contract, but your closing on the property is subject to planning department approval of our master site plan. Okay, you want to do that so that you don't end up with a piece of property that you can't use. A lot of churches don't know that. They go out and they buy a piece of property like this. They think, well, who would be against the church? I mean, we're here to serve the community. We want to do good things, and of course everybody's going to support us. Well, no, not necessarily. The enemy has his helpers out there, and the enemy wants to defeat you. And what a better way to cripple the cause of Christ in areas like Concord or your city than to prevent the church from establishing a stronghold and a lighthouse and a ministry center. So not everybody's necessarily going to be all for you. But here's what you want to do. Okay, let's look at the property lines here. I've got the yellow lines out here that show the property borders, and of course on Deckinger Court and Clayton Road, those are the two borders along with the yellow lines that you see going around the property. Now, when you start out with a piece of property like this, what you want to do is get a list, and you can do this through title companies. If you have a realtor in your office, it's not that hard to do. Get a list of everybody who owns a home within 300 to 500 feet of your property line. Now, when you set up with the planning department and prior to a public hearing, you're going to have to do this anyway. You're going to have to get a list of everybody that owns land, and it's usually within 300 to 500 feet. It sometimes varies. You know, it's usually around 300, but we advise you to go out 500. Get a list, a name, address, everything of everybody who lives within 300 to 500 feet. What we're going to do is we're going to invite them to a meeting. At the Planning Commission, they're going to be invited to show up and speak their opinion. So what we want to do is get to know them first, okay? So you want to do this well in advance of a Planning Commission meeting. We're going to invite them to a informational gathering. You can have it at your existing church. In this case, we had it in one of the rooms at Clayton Elementary. What's nice is everybody is coming in. We're taking the proactive positioning here in that we are going to them and we are asking them to come in.